Hello everyone, welcome to SwitchUp. My name is Glen and today we've got our recap video for you of the 10 reviews we did last month. I'll be going through the 10 games, giving you a brief idea of our thoughts during our reviews and then obviously letting you know the scores they got, and I will also put the links to all of the reviews in the top pink comment if you want to have a look in more detail at any of the games. Just a quick personal message before we get started. I've had a bit of a dental issue recently. I don't know if you can hear it in the video, but I very much feel like I'm lisping as I talk. What with the lockdown, it's very hard to go and see someone to get it fixed at the minute, but please just do bear that in mind if I sound as if I'm speaking a little differently. Okay, life story over, let's get started. The game that got the lowest score for the month then was a game called Summer in Mara, which was reviewed by Mark and is a farm life simulator based on a tropical island. This game came about via a Kickstarter campaign and drew some admiring looks due to its art style, as well as people seeing that nice relaxing gameplay that you usually find in games such as these. Whilst you will find that nice relaxing gameplay here, and it does have a nice aesthetic to it, it also comes with an abundance of fetch quests, and not just that, but the way that they are dealt with is quite tedious. Throw in some frame rate issues and you have a game that's flawed, but can still be fun if you have any sort of interest in farm life simulators, and that fairly unique setting of the island certainly helps with that. This felt like a game that needed a bit longer in the oven in all honesty, and got a SwitchUp score of 67%. The next game for the month then was The Outer Worlds, a game of course which had been out elsewhere for a little while, and there was a lot of hype about this one when it was announced that it was coming to the Switch. In terms of its gameplay, Mark found it to be just as fun as ever, but unfortunately the port was not particularly well done. There were a lot of issues, both in terms of performance and just the general visuals themselves. Then of course you have the high price point, which for gameplay alone is probably worth it, but when you factor in the aforementioned issues, points needed to be docked. If you can look past the graphical limitations of this Switch version and have no other way to play the game, then this is still a fantastic experience, but with those points in mind, it got a SwitchUp score of 68%. Next up then was a game that I reviewed. This was Blair Witch, and funnily enough, everything I've just said for The Outer Worlds could pretty much apply to this game too. This game came out elsewhere in 2019 and is a walking simulator horror game from Bloober Team, the people behind the Layers of Fear series. It introduces some interesting mechanics for the genre, such as a video camera that can manipulate time, as well as you having a dog, an animal companion, to join you on your quest, but unfortunately the graphical issues in this version, in respect of some terrible pop-in, really did break the immersion of the game. How are you meant to fear what's in the shadows or behind the trees when they take so long to load in? So it feels like a case of so near so far in terms of this Switch port. Again, if you can find it on sale, it's not a bad game by any stretch, but in its current state it got a SwitchUp score of 68%. The next game then, a blast from the past, which seemed to be a theme for a lot of the games this month. This was SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. This one was reviewed for us by a good friend of the channel, Dave Morrish, and his wife Sophie, and the version of the game reviewed was version 1.0.1, which was the version that included the day one patch. Whilst the gameplay was fun, it being your classic 3D collectathon platformer, even after this patch there were some issues. There were some graphical glitches, plus the jumping mechanic and the camera hadn't aged particularly well, which is unfortunate. That being said, the humour and charm of the series certainly shone through, and if you are a fan of the game you will find some serious enjoyment here. All in all, this got a SwitchUp score of 71%. The next game, and you'll see what I mean by blast from the past, this was Star Wars Episode 1 Racer, which was a game that of course came out on the PC, the N64 and the Dreamcast, possibly others I don't remember. This racing game was based on the scene in Episode 1 where Anakin Skywalker is racing for his freedom, and was definitely a fan favourite back in the day. It's held up fairly well, the general racing is fun, there's a good sense of speed to it, plus the boosting mechanic is quite unique in that you have to fill it up by pushing the left stick forward before being able to boost, but you have to be careful not to overheat your engines. There's an upgrade system as well where you can buy new parts for your pod, plus local multiplayer. At the time of review you could only play with your friend, although I have been told since there's been a patch to include AI bots in those matches, which is good. Plus again, when we reviewed it, there was no motion control option, although again I hear this may have been patched in since. The biggest problem with the game is just there wasn't much effort put into this port, and so much more could have been done to really update it. Plus there are some balancing issues with regards to the difficulty, with the first cup being way too easy and then the jump in difficulty being quite a steep one, but if you enjoyed the game back in the day, you'll still have fun with this one for sure, and it got a SwitchUp score of 71%. The next game was a game called Ancestors Legacy, which is a real-time strategy game based in the Middle Ages with a few different campaigns seeing you play as Vikings, Anglo-Saxons and a couple of others. There aren't that many real-time strategy games on the Switch, so this one really had a chance to make a name for itself and become the one you want to buy, and to be fair it doesn't do a bad job of staking its claim. The campaign is a long one, which introduces new mechanics all the time, the base building is fun, and the missions where you don't have the opportunity to base build and have to go out and be quite stealthy were also very enjoyable. It doesn't have any sort of multiplayer, not online or even something like LAN, which is disappointing, plus it is fairly expensive, and at the minute it's digital only, although a few people in the comments to my video did say that they've heard there is a physical release coming at some point. If you like RTS games, this one's definitely worth considering, and it got a SwitchUp score of 76%. The next game for the month was Railway Empire, which was a game Mark reviewed and is a tycoon game where you have to build up the best empire in North America. Now I know from before he did the review that Mark wasn't really sure what to expect with this one, but really ended up enjoying it and found it incredibly addictive. There are a wealth of options and so much to do, and it's all incredibly deep. In terms of the negatives, the visuals aren't great, and that's probably quite a kind way to say it. Plus it is relatively expensive, although to be fair, for the amount of time you'll sink into it if you enjoy these sort of games, I'm sure you'd get your money's worth. This is most certainly one of those games where you'll get more out the more you put in, and it got a SwitchUp score of 76%. Coming in at third place for the month then was one of my reviews. This was Ruiner. This is a top-down twin-stick shooter with a cyberpunk setting. Twin-stick shooting and cyberpunk are some of my favourite elements when it comes to games, so I was very much looking forward to trying this one. I know it had been out elsewhere for a little while. This game is fantastic fun. It sees you going through fairly linear levels before being trapped in an arena where you have to kill everyone in the room before you can move on, and there are some pretty intense boss battles as well, particularly towards the end of the game where the difficulty really ramps up. And that was one of my issues with the game, is that it doesn't feel hugely balanced in terms of its difficulty. I absolutely breezed through the first third of the game. The second third felt like a good challenge and where I expected the game to be to start with, and the last third of the game was outrageously hard. I did feel there was some repetition in terms of the level design as well, and the aesthetic, whilst absolutely wonderful, I love the world they built, I wish they'd have taken it outside a bit more. A lot of it is in industrial areas. With all that being said, I still had a great time with this game, and if you have any sort of affinity for cyberpunk or twin stick shooting, you'll have a great time here. It got a SwitchUp score of 78%. Next was a game that just missed the cut to be in last month's roundup video. This is Shantae and the 7 Sirens. There are a few Shantae games on the Switch, and this new version takes the game back to a more Metroidvania-esque gameplay stance, moving away from the previous entry, which was more of a straight-up platformer. You as Shantae have been invited to a tropical island to take part in a concert with some other half-genies, and whilst you are there, they are kidnapped and you must go and rescue them. You are then given their powers when you find them, and of course then you can use these to open up new areas, as you would expect in a Metroidvania. The game looks beautiful with that wonderful hand-drawn style, includes animated cutscenes for the first time in the series I believe, and has streamlined its magic system to some extent, which I'm sure some fans will find a good thing, whilst others may lament this change. But either way, our reviewer, this one was done by Dave again for us, really enjoyed this aspect. On a system overflowing with Metroidvanias, this one is definitely right up there, and it got a SwitchUp score of 88%. And coming in at first place for the month then was Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary Edition. This 20th Anniversary Edition came out elsewhere in 2016 to mark the actual 20th anniversary of that game, and has now of course been brought along to the Switch. Mark reviewed this one for us. He's a big Duke Nukem fan, and found not only does the game hold up fantastically well anyway, but the amount of extra content that's been added, including 8-player online play, just elevated things to a whole new level. The asking price of £7.99 for an older game that has received some serious love and attention seems very fair, and it had an introductory price which I think is still on as per the time of this video, halving that price further still. At the end of the day, it's Duke Nukem 3D on the go. And if that sounds like a good idea, well, it's because it is. It got a SwitchUp score of 92%. So there you have it, there are the 10 games for this month. I don't actually remember a month where there were so many games that got a score of 60 odd, which is quite strange, but there you go. Again, I just want to say I am having dental related issues at the minute. I know you can hear it because I can hear it as I'm talking. I had to be big and brave to do this video because I really don't like the way I sound at the minute, but the show must go on. And I know you lot, I know you'll appreciate that, and be nice and kind in the comments. Anyway, a quick thank you to our Patreons as always for your continued support. Check out the links to the reviews in the top pinned comment. Thank you all for watching our videos. Take care, stay safe, and until next time, happy gaming.